Welcome to the Hockey Writers Sabres Scoop, a weekly show with our top Buffalo Sabres writing crew, bringing you the latest news, rumors, trades, player grades, game results, and much more. From training camp to the playoffs, from draft day to the trade deadline, our team covers everything that happens with the Sabres. So get a pen and paper and turn up the volume. You're about to get the Sabres Scoop. Sabres Scoop.
Welcome to Sabres Scoop, presented by the Hockey Writers, a once-a-week show covering all things Buffalo Sabres and NHL hockey. I'm Jordan Jacklin. He's Brandon Seltenrich. Let's get right into our Sabres news from this past week. Starting off, we have our goaltender Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, who made his season debut on Tuesday night against the Anaheim Ducks, and he stopped 21 of 23 shots, Brandon. I just want to get your opinion here. What do you think of his performance compared to your expectations, because he struggled at the American Hockey League level. Let's just call it how it is these past couple of years. He had a decent stint in the NHL during the 4 games he played last year, but does he look a little bit more ready than he did last season, in your opinion?
In my opinion, yeah, he does. And obviously, it's 1 game, so it's not even a sample size. It's just 1 game. But I think even in a loss, he played fairly well. I mean, only letting up 2 goals against a team that's done very well in the standings to date in the Anaheim Ducks. Obviously, he wasn't very busy. 23 shots isn't a lot, but I think he looked fairly capable between the pipes. As far as, his strides that he's taken in the AHL this season, I mean, he definitely has taken some. He got his first shutout. He was named a player of the week, after a string of very good games, and his team is winning, even though his stats aren't that pretty. I think he's definitely taken a big stride. And this, even though it was a 2-0 loss, I think he had a fairly good showing in his, season debut for the Sabres. And I think definitely a big improvement upon last year for sure.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. He has taken some strides, as the season's progressed. I've noticed that, like you mentioned, with him getting that first shutout. And even in this game, the big thing is he gave the team a chance to win, obviously there's not much we can do on that first goal. I don't think he could have done much on that. We're going to dive into that one very soon. But even the second goal that he allowed in, it wasn't the best goal to allow, but you only allowed 2 goals, right? The Sabres didn't even score a goal. So there's no outcome where they were going to win that game. And considering he was an emergency recall, they had to throw somebody in there. I thought he did a pretty good job, and he kind of made my confidence in his game very higher. And, yeah. And, we got to talk about that first goal, Brandon, that was scored by Trevor Zegras. I'm sure. Have you heard of it? I'm sure you've seen it going around social media. What are your thoughts on that alley-oop pass to Sonny Milano from Trevor Zegras?
It's funny because I was actually at the game in person, and I can't tell if I'm happy or sad about the fact that I got to see this in person. But
you should be happy.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, this was a game the Sabres were going to lose, and I got to tell you, when I saw this goal scored, I wasn't too up close, but it was kind of disbelief. I was like, was that bad and above the crossbar? But then it wasn't, and I was like, okay, I got to give them props on this. That's a lot of creativity from Trevor Zegras, a very young player in this league, to be able to have the confidence to make that move. But that's what we see young players doing. And Sonny Milano is a guy who's, when he was 14 years old, he was making videos on YouTube of him batting pucks into the net and doing all fancy tricks. And so it obviously paid off. And, he's a guy who's finally getting going with this current team of his. So those 2 players connecting like that was really something special to see. Unfortunately, it was against the Sabres, because we're going to have to watch this all season long and probably past that. But it was really fun to watch.
Oh, yeah, definitely, for sure. The creativity, man, of Trevor Zegras. He makes a play like that every game, whether it's between the legs. He's probably going to end up scoring a Michigan soon, and he's shown that he can, if he's not going to get the Michigan, he could just make an alley-oop pass. And Sonny Milano's efforts on that, I don't think could be understated, because he did have to bat that out of midair. And I just really like Trevor Zegras as a player. I don't know if you got a chance to watch the post-game interview at all with ESPN, but he has a lot of personality, man, like the way that he talks. I think the NHL really needs to market this guy, because he's a star. And just a little follow-up to that would be, is this the best goal you think you've seen in the NHL? And if not, of your watching, obviously, as a viewer, if not, what is the best goal you've seen live, whether it's from a guy like Pavel Datsyuk or somebody else unnamed?
Something I've seen live, like I was actually watching the game. This is probably definitely it for me. I've watched some crazy highlights. That one Ovechkin goal from 05 or 06 comes to mind, where he falls on his back and bats it in and he's not even looking. with the magic stick, Sally, and all that. That comes to mind. But this one is definitely the one in my lifetime I've seen live that is the most impressive. A close second would be when Tomas Hertl started the between the legs trend by scoring on Marty Biron as a New York Ranger and ended his career.
I remember
That was a
that.
very fun goal to watch, and I remember that very vividly when I saw that. And then all the players started doing that move.
He was
So
only like
those
a few
two,
games into his NHL career
yeah,
too when he did that.
exactly. So that was super fun, and those are probably my top two. This is up there.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, the Rick Nash goal he scored when he was a member of Columbus against Phoenix was pretty good, but I still don't think it's necessarily on this tier because I mean, he did a lot of work for that goal, but like in terms of like pure skill, creativity, out of the box thinking, I just don't know if anybody really surpasses what Trevor Zegras did against the Buffalo Sabres.
Yeah. And as Sabres fans, unfortunately, people are going to be talking about this one for years to come, but it was awesome to watch. One guy who we hope can score some goals like that for the Sabres. We're talking about Peyton Krebs here, has 7 points in his last 3 games with the Rochester Americans in the AHL, including a 3-point game in yesterday's game. And he scored the OT winner. It was a nice sort of Ovechkin's wheelhouse, nice setup on the circle on his off wing, and he just clapped it home. And it was a great overtime winner. So that was a very impressive performance by him. Here's the question: should he play the rest of the season in the AHL, or should he eventually be called up to get a look? Can he contribute for the Sabres like some of these young guns are contributing for teams like the Ducks?
Well, the good news is, Brandon, is that first line is really gelling between him, JJ Peterka, Jack Quinn. They're looking like rock stars together at the moment. So you can't split that up right now. I think obviously after the trade deadline, around March or so is probably going to be the time where you'll see him get a stint. You know, I think he'll get a good 10 to 15 games like a lot of players have in the past. And honestly, that's probably the best for him because honestly, he's doing a lot of good stuff here with Rochester. An overtime winner was great, by the way. I don't know if you saw that one time shot that he took, but he's really kind of showcasing his skill set that he wasn't really showing in Vegas, you know, when he was at the NHL level. And to see him really dominate, this is what you want out of your prospects. In order for them to really improve that they belong to the next level, they need to dominate the one that they're currently in. And for now, you definitely got to keep Krebs just dominating at the AHL.
I totally agree with you there, but hopefully we do get to see him towards the end of the season, like you said, after the deadline when some spots open up. So here's the next question I have for you. If he were to get called up, say, March approaching April towards the end of the season, last few games, where would he fit in the lineup? Is are with guys who are potentially still going to be on the Sabres at that point. Put on your coach's hat, try to predict who he should play with when he does make his Sabres debut.
See, this is interesting because, like, I don't know exactly what position he's going to play. I know at the NHL he's primarily played as a winger, I believe. So I imagine he'll probably be a winger. He's played with Dylan Cousins with Team Canada before at the World Juniors. So I think a decent start would probably be to put him there. I don't necessarily know what the lineup's going to be looking like at that time, but maybe you take Vinny Hinostroza off and then you could potentially be putting a Cousins Krebs pairing. That's a funny name there, the Cousins Krebs pair. And they could be that dynamic duo potentially for a good 10-game stint, hopefully. I remember we have to see how Alex Tuck plays into this lineup too, because maybe all three of them will be on the line together. There's so many potential combinations that could work here. But if you're going to call him up, in my opinion, he has to be in the top 9. He obviously cannot be playing on the 4th line. That doesn't do anything. I know Montreal thinks they can do that with Cole Caulfield, but if you're trying to really develop a guy, you have to be putting him at least on the 3rd line. So you're going to be seeing him there. And in my opinion, I think he's probably going to end up being on the 2nd line, playing next to Dylan Cousins. Curious to get your thought on that topic there, Brandon.
Yeah, in the same vein, I was going to say it'd be really cool to see him alongside Dylan Cousins. Like you said, we've seen that before. And I think the chemistry there, the potential chemistry rather, is just really awesome to think about. And that would be a really cool pairing between those two and whoever else fits on the other wing. Obviously, Casey Middlestat, I still have faith in him when, he's had a very unfortunate run of things this season. He's out injured again and he's getting some tests done and he's probably going to be out for a long time. But when he does come back, if it's at the same time as Krebs, I'd like to see if there's chemistry there as well, because I still think Middlestat can be a pretty good, candidate for the first line center slot. But yeah, I definitely think that Krebs Cousins pairing in the middle 6 would be great. I also think it'd be cool to see Krebs on the 2nd power play unit, get him some special teams times, see what he can do, because based on that overtime winner and how he's been playing in Rochester, he can definitely handle it.
Definitely. The Rochester Americans have just been looking really good, honestly, this last few game stretches that they've been playing. And, we got to talk a little bit of goaltending here, as we had brought up earlier in our show. Craig Anderson's status has been downgraded to month, which is not a good sign for a 40-year-old goaltender. What is the short-term solution, you think, for fixing this issue? I know we kind of talked about this a bit last week after the acquisition of Malcolm Subban, but UPL was on the emergency recall, so, he's going to probably be sent down here very shortly. What is the short-term solution? Who are you ready with?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, I'd like to say that's unfortunate for Craig Anderson. I think that probably spells the end of his career. It's a little bit unceremonious.
Do you think
but
he comes back, though, at some point? Do you think he'll play another game?
Maybe toward the end of the season. For another team, I certainly don't think so. I just can't see that happening. A little unceremonious, but he's had a great career, and I really hope he just does recover and at least gets to get on the ice at least one more time. As far as the Sabres short-term solution, that's what Malcolm Subban was supposed to be. Unfortunately, now he's also on injured reserve. You have Tokarski out as well. You were rolling with an Aaron Dell and UPL tandem, and that's just not going to get it done. I don't know what the Sabres are going to do. Hopefully Subban is able to come back. Hopefully Tokarski is able to come back, because at least those goalies are capable of starting and playing an NHL game. I really don't want to expose UPL to the ups and downs of what this Sabres season is. At least too much. I think it's nice to get him in there for a couple of games, but he can't be, like you said, he's going to be sent back down, and he can't be the, solution for the rest of the season. They've got to get these guys back healthy. I don't see them making
You
a
also
trade.
can't be yo-yoing him. You can't just be
Exactly.
bringing him up and then constantly bringing him down. That's not good for any player's development.
Exactly. He can't be that emergency recall guy who just comes up when when somebody gets injured, because that's, like you said, it's not good. I'd rather he'd be playing in Rochester and playing on a good team and getting a lot of experience and getting stronger and better. That's what he needs. So I really hope they get these guys back from injury, but we're going to talk about possible trade options too later. So I'm curious to hear what you think, though.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know. I think they're going to have to look externally after the season. Obviously, they're going to need to figure that out. It's promising that Devin Levi's been tearing it up in the NCAA. He looks like a guy that definitely will be a future goaltender for this organization. But we're talking short term here. These are all long-term problems, right? These are all long-term potential solutions. So short term, I mean, Aaron Dell hasn't really cut it, right? Like I've seen some stats. I think the Sabres have allowed 20 goals or something like that in their past 5 games. They obviously played pretty good they only allowed 2 their other game, but they've been pretty bad defensively. And I think goaltending has been kind of the issue, and honestly, the Achilles heel of a group that's actually been overperforming relatively. So I hope Malcolm Subban is the guy. I would like to think that he can just come in and hopefully, just ride it out the rest of the season, because they need at least somebody just be competent enough, we don't want to see like 7-2 losses every night. And I know we haven't really been seeing that, but at the way we're heading, that could end up being the result. So I hope we can just get some competency out of the guys that are currently here in our organization now.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I hope Subban turns into that as well. I mean, he has the NHL experience, I think, to do that. Let's just get him healthy.
And, let's actually take a look now a little bit long-term here past this season. I wrote an article recently on the perspective of a Joonas Korpisalo trade acquiring the Columbus Blue Jackets netminder. And to me, that just doesn't really make sense. You're not going to really, a rebuilding team like the Sabres, it's not going to be trading draft capital or young prospects to acquire him. He's also not exactly having a great season, which is why potentially in the offseason, it would make sense if he does end up going to unrestricted free agency. And there's a decent chance that could happen, because Elvis Merzlikins is that guy there for the foreseeable future. They've signed him to 5 years after this one at starter money at $5.4 million. Korpisalo is going to want to raise him this 2.8. The Sabres could afford to give him so. So he's a guy, in my eyes, the Sabres will be targeting come free agency this year. But the big question for you is, because this is going to honestly be the free agency where a lot of goalies are available, Brandon. There's some crazy names. I'm just going to say some, like Jack Campbell. I don't know if that actually will happen, but he is currently he is set to expire. Joonas Korpisalo, Marc-Andre Fleury, that's a unique one, and Alexander Georgiev out of New York. I have those names. Who really entices you the most, and who do you think could be a good stopgap filler for the next few years potentially, until a guy like UPL or Devin Levi can play?
Who really intrigues me is the last name you mentioned, Alexander Georgiev from the New York Rangers, because you've got to think, I've thought since he's come into the NHL that he has starting potential. He's just in a battle with Shesterkin that he's going to lose. Igor Shesterkin is the guy of the future. He's the next Lundqvist in New York. I mean, he's showing all signs of being an extremely good goaltender, and he's playing very well this season. And he's to attribute for a lot of their success. I know he's been out injured, and Georgiev is in, but I really think this is Georgiev's case to say, hey, I could be a starter. And after this season, he's going to want a shot. And so a team like the Sabres might be the perfect chance. It's like a young team that's looking to get better and looking to have a young goaltender to lead them, and maybe he's a good fit. You've seen other teams poach goalies similar to him. I mean, Aiden Hill is having some success in San Jose with the Sharks. I mean, young goalies who haven't had a starting job yet. Like, I mean, look at Jack Campbell. He's a perfect example of guys who can excel if given the shot. And I think Georgiev is waiting for a shot. And I would love if the Sabres could get somebody like him.
Yeah, honestly, I think the situations there between Columbus and New York are almost identical because Igor Shesterkin is already locked up. They've committed to him being their starter for the foreseeable future. And if Georgiev wants that 4 to 5 million, especially when New York is committing all of that money to Jacob Trouba, Artemi Panarin, Mika Zibanejad, soon Lafreniere and Kako, right? They're obviously not going to be able to afford to pay their backup goaltender that type of money. The Sabres are going to be able to spend some bucks here this offseason. I think a guy like Korpisalo or potentially Georgiev, as you had mentioned, those are the guys they're going to be going after. So if you have to choose between one, who are you placing a bet on here? Are you saying it's Georgiev or are you saying it's Korpisalo?
As for who I want Georgiev, but I put money on Korpisalo. I think he's probably easier to get. And I think he's probably easier to convince, to be honest, just where he's at in his career and based on his experience. So I'm going to go with Korpisalo. It seems like a more realistic fit, in my opinion.
I'm on the Korpisalo train as well. So let's reset the show here. You're watching Sabres Scoop, presented by the Hockey Writers. Make sure to subscribe to and like the show on YouTube and catch the great hockey content on the hockeywriters.com and on our Twitter feed at Sabres Scoop THW. We're heading into our general NHL news here, and we have a lot to talk about regarding a specific NHL organization, and that is the Arizona Coyotes. God, I can't believe all the stuff that's going on with this franchise. We got to talk about the initial report that came out on Wednesday night that the team was at risk of losing access to Gila River Arena because of more than $1.3 million in unpaid city and state taxes. Arizona has since come current on all bills and tax liabilities. So they have paid off all the liabilities that they owe. The city of Glendale informed the Coyotes that they would bar team employees and vendors from their venue if the Coyotes did not pay the $250,000 in outstanding city taxes by December 20th. Now, that is a separate bill, by the way, and that is going to come into play here. But honestly, before we continue talking about all this stuff, what was your reaction to this news just when you were like looking at your phone or computer and were like, whoa? What was your initial thought?
Yeah. My initial thought was almost, it wasn't total surprise, but it was almost, where did this come from? Because the coverage has been fairly positive in recent months. I mean, our THW's very own Patrick Brown has done a great job of following all the arena news that has to do with the Arizona Coyotes. If you haven't read it, go back and read it. It's very good stuff. But he and all the other reporters, everything that's come out has been very positive until this. And you're like, whoa, where did this come from? I thought there was some stability finally, but we've thought that before, and it was shock. And to see everything that's coming out, and this is a still developing story, by the way, which we'll get to. It was initial shock. I don't know about you.
Yeah, it was shocking for me too, man. But it's not so shocking because last year it did come out that they were late on even paying player bonuses. Like they were late on making payments to the players in their organization and staff members. So it's not too surprising, but it is kind of crazy. And the Coyotes organization has already responded to this as they issued a statement regarding this, saying we have already launched an investigation to determine how this could have happened. And initial indications are that it appears to be the result of an unfortunate human error. Wow. Human error. Okay. Now, this is the crazy part. So Glendale city manager Kevin Phelps said that the Coyotes' human error explanation for their late payments, this is what he had to say about this. I tell you from my experience, I have never seen a Department of Revenue fire a Leon without having first sent numerous notices and calls to the taxpayer to get them into compliance. So based on that wording there, you can tell he doesn't really buy what the Coyotes are trying to say right now in the public eye. What do you have to think about that? Like, what do you think about all of this going on here? And do you think the Coyotes are truly in the wrong?
Yeah, I mean, human error definitely is a factor in a lot of things, and it definitely It definitely happens, but a $1.3 million unpaid city and state taxes human error kind of seems like there's more to it. It's hard to think, especially when this city manager is saying that, hey, we never just hit someone with a major bill. We say we send them numerous notices. We call them. And whoever the taxpayer is, I know they've switched ownership a couple of times in the past number of years, and obviously there's different people footing the bill, and I'm sure it adds up over time, but it's not like they just didn't know this existed. They had to have known that it was unpaid, right? At least you would think. I can't say for sure, but that's my gut feeling.
Yeah, and there's still more developing as of just a few hours ago because Mike Stevens at the Hockey News has been reporting updates on the situation on Twitter. And he said that he spoke with Glendale city manager Kevin Phelps, who we mentioned just a few moments ago, who said the Coyotes have presented checks that make them current on the 2021 season. So that was last year, and game day expenses for this year, the 2021-22 season. They have not, however, paid rent for Gila River Arena. That's the key point there. And what I got to ask you, Brandon, is what do we think about the ongoing saga that is the Coyotes organization? And how do we think this is going to end?
Like we've said, this has been ongoing for a while. It's not just today, it's not just the past year, it's several years. I remember reading about this for years. It's always been a problem. It started with attendance issues. They couldn't get butts in seats, pretty much is what it was. And so they couldn't sell the tickets, and the team wasn't very good since 2012. And there were a lot of problems. And then the money problems started to show up. And you think, is this team going to relocate? Which we're going to get to in a minute. But I'm not sure it's going to end well. I mean, you like to think with people like Shane Doan getting involved, people who love the team and want the team to be there, that it's going to end well, but it's hard to see how it turns out at this point.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. It's kind of insane that this is all going on. The NHL has even made a comment on this because Gary Bettman is saying that, oh, this isn't a problem, but we'll deal with it tomorrow. That's an actual quote he said. So very odd, an odd thing to say, identifying that it's not a problem, but we'll deal with that tomorrow, the non-problem tomorrow. So I don't know. I guess this leads perfectly into the next question here, because is Gary Bettman and the NHL doing the right thing, trying so hard to keep the Coyotes in Arizona and find ownership there? Or is it worth it in the end if they can keep the city there?
Yeah, I mean, that we'll deal with it tomorrow thing is a very nonchalant answer. And when one of your 32 teams is in some trouble here, it looks like I would like to think he's going to be on it a little more, especially because he has been so adamant on keeping that team there. I mean, he said he wants hockey in the desert. The California teams are so successful. Vegas is so successful. Dallas, all these teams around the Coyotes are successful. And you're saying, why can't they just be stable? Why can't they have that ownership? And it just hasn't happened. Are they doing the right thing? In my heart, as someone who likes to see hockey in non-traditional hockey markets, I'd like to think so. But at this point, it's really hard to see this turn out well, like we both agreed upon. And you have to wonder if they do better somewhere else. And that leads well into the next question too. Yeah.
Yeah, that does lead well into the next question, Brandon. Let's throw it out there. This is purely hypothetical. This is not confirmed, but we got to just throw it out there. Where could we see the team being relocated to in a couple of years? If that were to happen, if this were to go really south and maybe a new ownership group gets involved and they decide, oh, we're going to pull this team from Arizona and we're going to move it somewhere else. Funny enough, I just wrote a section about this for Morning Skate the other day, and I brought up 3 players. But before I mention them, who are you picking, Brandon?
Well, staying, along the theme of non-traditional hockey markets, I think it's going to be another one of those. And I think it's going to be somewhere in the middle of the United States. And I know it's not anything new, but I think it's going to be Houston. I think the attraction of a cross Texas state rivalry between Dallas and Houston would be really awesome. I think that's something the NHL honestly wants at the end of the day. And I think just because it is such a big city in the country that it makes a lot of sense. And they stay in the Central Division. So it makes a lot of sense at the end of the day. As far as big American cities that haven't been tried yet, that's definitely one. But you hear Quebec City always thrown in there into the conversation. So I'm not sure if another Canadian team would be in the cards here. Who knows? But very interested to hear your take on it.
Yeah, well, I do have a few notes here. And honestly, to me, it really does seem like you brought them up that Houston is kind of destined for the next landing spot for an NHL team. And I think relocation could make sense here because Tillman Fertitta, who is the owner of the NBA's Houston Rockets, has been kind of adamant about wanting a franchise ever since 2017. He's even spoken directly to the league and asked questions about this. Is this something he is interested in? And I could honestly see it working out potentially because Houston isn't like so far away from Arizona. And, it kind of is that similar type concept. I could see it working there. Quebec City, obviously, there's always going to be a chance. I have to believe that someday it is going to happen. I don't know if they fit the bill for this situation. One team, though, I do want to bring up that I don't think really is getting discussed enough, considering they almost got a team back when the Pittsburgh Penguins nearly were selling their franchise back in like 06, 07, Kansas City. And, I know it was a while ago that Kansas City was an NHL team, but they how's an ECHL team right now, the Kansas City Mavericks. And I think it could work there, man. I think you'll be surprised. I think within the next 20 years, I could see Kansas City getting back into an NHL market. Dill Bailey, has even commented on this. He said Kansas City has never been entirely off our radar screen, whether that's just a PR statement or whether there's truth to that. I think Kansas City can't be out of play when it comes to these conversations.
That's an interesting candidate right there. I mean, they have two of the big four pro sports teams. They have the Kansas City Chiefs and the Royals there. NFL and MLB on the list. Add in the NHL. That would certainly be interesting. And they're in the state of Missouri. So there's a St. Louis rivalry right there. That definitely checks a lot of the boxes. So that's one I haven't thought about, and they have not had a team in a long time, but that would be very interesting. Totally. Next topic we're going into here, another fun one, EA Sports. I don't know if you play the NHL game series.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if any of our fans do, but this is really cool to see. This is something a lot of people have been asking for. So let's get right into it. EA Sports announced today that you can now play in the World Juniors and wear the authentic IIHF jerseys. Good thing they got that licensing. In addition to that, you can now play as the national women's teams in the game starting in January. They showed the game concepts for the AI generated graphics of, I believe it was Marie Philippoulin and Hillary Knight. They were the two players that they were showcasing today. Very cool to see those. What are our thoughts on this, and does it really enhance the game experience compared to previous years as far as the playability of World Juniors and women's hockey?
Oh yeah, because if you try to play you can actually play the Spengler Cup, or maybe that was a few years ago now, but I remember that was a option in the game, and the jerseys, they've just have never had the actual good jerseys for any of the nations that are involved. So the fact that we can actually see the real Canadian jersey, the real American jersey, that means everything, man. And I think that's going to be a lot if they integrate that into Be a Pro, and you can have your own character playing in the World Juniors. You're going to sell a lot more games that way. So this has been a long time coming. And I know it's been difficult because the IIHF just hasn't wanted to really give any of those rights away, but I guess they finally figured out a way to make this work. So that's a very good call right there. And for the women's, that means everything, having all the women's national teams involved, whether it's in Canada, America, Finland. Because, young girls are going to play this game potentially. And now they're going to have an option to play as Marie Philippoulin. If you're Canadian, or, an American girl could have a chance to play as Hillary Knight. That really does mean a lot for growing the game. And I'm really glad because it's long overdue, in my opinion. Curious to get your thoughts there.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, it's taken a long time for the NHL even to get, all the pro leagues around the world into the game. I mean, they just got the ECHL a couple of years ago, which is really cool for fans of minor hockey. They've gotten all these different leagues, the junior leagues, and then they're finally inserting this. And it's still not, the NWHL, you still don't have the teams there, but you have the national teams, and that's, very high profile players play for the Olympic teams. I mean, even the ones we mentioned. Somebody who I think, next question is, who should be the highest rated women's player in our opinion? I think Haley Wickenheiser is going to be up there. I mean, I don't know if they're going to have current and past players.
I don't know. That'd be cool.
Yeah, that's sort of what I was thinking, because they also added in NHL legends as well, which is something a lot of people like. But if they did have current and past players, that would be my vote. But I mean, it's really, really awesome to see. So.
Yeah, if I was to pick the highest rated players from some of these teams, I did just watch the Canadian women's national team play at the Capital City Challenge, and I've seen them play obviously before on TV. But Marie Philippoulin's a different breed. She was dangling all the guys, and she was really making herself her presence known. I think they got to make her a 90 at least, like kind of set that tone there. And honestly, it's probably going to be Hillary Knight for America, but Kendall Coyne should have like a 95 speed, like she should just be able to race, because like we saw at the All-Star game a few years ago, and we've seen her in the PWHPA. She can just fly.
Yeah, I mean, and they caught it on a speed clock. I mean, she's super fast. So yeah, those stats better be off the charts. I totally agree.
Definitely. And diving into our last topic of the show, I don't know if we actually covered this last week, because I'm trying to remember if this happened, but we do got to dive into the Vancouver Canucks situation here, because, obviously they did fire Jim Benning. They fired Travis Green. Today, they're bringing in Jim Rutherford as president of hockey operations. And his first task really is going to be trying to find the next general manager that he can mentor, that he can kind of look after. He's been in that type of role before. And honestly, this is a real good ad for the Vancouver Canucks organization. You saw what he did with the Carolina Hurricanes all the way back, and specifically the Pittsburgh Penguins. This man, I believe, has won 3 cups. Like, he knows how to win at the NHL level. And I think it's good that he's not the GM directly, because he's kind of past his prime at that point. But the Canucks really just needed somebody that was a president. And that's something that I think ownership and Francesco Aquilini, I think that was actually a good call by him, which you don't really say that much these days. So I like that move. What are your initial thoughts on that, Brandon?
Yeah, it's a good move. I mean, for him to get back into a position, I think this is definitely an exciting one for him. I mean, there's a lot of potential with the Canucks as a team, and it just looked like a bit of mismanagement and then a bit of, miscoaching was sort of tanking them as far as this season goes. But there's a ton of potential as far as the young players that they have and the pieces that they have. It should be an exciting opportunity. As far as who has been rumored to be the next GM, I'm not sure I'm sold on any of the candidates, especially to hear Marc Bergevin thrown in there. That intrigues me. I mean, the Cup final run with Montreal definitely seems like a fluke, and after signing that contract and being fired, to the disastrous start of their season and all the hot water he hasn't been directly affected by any of the fallout of the Blackhawks news and all this other stuff, but he's been tied into some questionable stuff. So I'm intrigued that he's rumored to be on the short list of candidates here. So I can't say for sure, but I'd be really surprised if it was Bergevin.
I'm going to throw out some other names here that have actually been talked about. Like, I can't believe Mike Gillis's name has even come up in these conversations. He was the GM of the team up until 2013. That's almost 9 years later. Like, we're about to enter 2022 and he's still getting rumored. That would be shocking if they brought him back. Lawrence Gilman, who's the AGM in the Leafs, obviously helped construct the salary cap, as a kind of a cap wizard. That's kind of how he's known across the league. Does make sense. That would be a reunion for him, because he did get a start in Vancouver. I don't necessarily know. I mean, it would take a lot. If he really wants to be a GM, obviously that could happen, but Bergevin too, that would be pretty hilarious if they went with Marc Bergevin, I just have to say. But considering they're trying to mentor somebody and they just brought in Rutherford, I kind of think Marc Bergevin's out the window at this point. I'd be kind of surprised if they really tried to make that connection. And I kind of hope, because we've just been seeing so much recycling, of all of these guys. They just keep going back and forth. I hope they just pick somebody out of the blue that we don't even know, because we kind of need that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I was going to say, but I hope it's a name that I haven't heard of, or at least I haven't heard of in a long time, or somebody who's never been NHL general manager yet, and they get an opportunity to take this young team and run with it. I mean, that would be definitely exciting to see. So I definitely agree with you. They are keep recycling the same guys, and I hope it's somebody new who has not been a GM before.
Definitely. And, just as we're about to wrap up the show here, Brandon, it's been pretty fun. We got the World Juniors coming up. Prokhor Poltapov, surprisingly, is not on the Russian preliminary roster, so we won't be getting to watch him play, or Kisakov. But we're going to see a lot of guys like Owen Power come up. We'll obviously do a preview of that very shortly. It's kind of an exciting time here, as Christmas is going along here. So are you excited?
Very excited. I love the World Juniors. I'm very excited to see all the Sabres prospects that are going to be in it, and all the other guys who are going to make a huge impact, and hopefully get excited about some, new young players. I always love to watch, and I'll be rooting for the US. I know you'll be rooting for Canada. It should be a fun little rivalry.
Yeah, it definitely will. It will be a fun rivalry. So with that, we thank you for joining us. And as this has been Sabres Scoop presented by the Hockey Writers, make sure you subscribe to the show on YouTube and follow us on Twitter at Sabres Scoop THW. Once again, make sure you head over to morningskate.io, by the way, to sign up for our daily Morning Skate newsletter so you don't miss out on that latest and weirdest hockey news coming at you every day. Don't miss out on all of the great hockey content over at thehockeywriters.com. For Brandon, this is Jordan, and this has been Sabres Scoop. Until next time.